The great choir of silence shook as the earth trembled in holy terror. A wordless scream, as if from the legions of dead slaves, rose to the zenith of the black sky. Before the might of the 7 Magisters Sidereal, the veil shattered like the flimsiest glass. Dream and waking lay before their feet, 2 paths diverging. Into the dream they strode, dauntless, for nothing in the realms of gods or man could keep them from their promised prize. Welcome, patrons. By now you should know the basic story of how the Blight started. 7 high priests heard whispers from the 7 old gods they worshipped, telling them to go into the Golden City in the Fade. The Magisters did so, and once they walked in the Golden City, the Maker threw them out, the Golden City turning black, and the Magisters becoming tainted creatures which would bring about the Blights. By now we know this isn't a fairy tale, but the Chant of Light did get some details wrong. So let's dig deeper on the Magisters Sidereal. The Old God Religion. First up, let's quickly do an overview on the Old Gods. The Chantry states that the Old Gods are demons who tricked humans into worshipping them. The humans brought the demons through the veil, where they took the form of dragons. The Maker was pissed that humans would worship another god and banish the other gods in underground prisons. This is the original sin. It's unknown what the Old Gods actually are, but they are worshipped in the form of dragons. Tevinter doesn't actually believe the Old Gods created the world, but instead worship them because the gods gave humans the knowledge of blood magic. Their worship is a form of payment for secrets of the world. There are 7 known Old Gods: Dumat, Dragon of Silence; Zazakel, Dragon of Chaos; Toth, Dragon of Fire; Andral, Dragon of Slaves; Urthemiel, Dragon of Beauty; Razakel, Dragon of Mystery; and Lusicon, Dragon of Night. Now, you may note that I said known gods. If you end up doing the Draconis Astrarian puzzle, you get a neat little codex entry about the constellation, which hints at what may be an 8th old god that was stricken from historical records. What this means is unknown and probably for another video, but for now, something to keep in mind. The Magisters Sidereal. Before we begin this segment, I would like to define what the word sidereal means, because I can't be the only one who did not know what the word was or the fact that it wasn't pronounced sidereal. Our boy Merriam-Webster defines it as of relating to or expressed in relation to stars or constellations. So in this sense, I'm taking this to mean that the high priests have achieved a rank so high it has to be compared to the stars in the sky. Moving on, the story of the breaching from the Chant of Light says that the high priest of Dumat was the first to start the plan. Dumat told him to meet him in the Fade, where he would become like a god. The high priest of Dumat had trouble coming up with a way to do this, so he reached out to the high priest of Urthemiel. Urthemiel's priest was reluctant at first, but when his god told him to do this as well, he was all on board. Eventually they hired all of the high priests to do this. It seems that each high priest of the old gods actually had their own title, and they are referred to as High Priest of Dumat, the Conductor of Silence; High Priest of Zazakel, Madman of Chaos; High Priest of Toth, Forged Rite of Fire; High Priest of Andral, Appraiser of Slaves; High Priest of Urthemiel, Architect of Beauty; High Priest of Razakel, Augur of Mystery; High Priest of Lusicon, Watchman of Night. If you have played the games, you know that who we know as Corypheus was the High Priest of Dumat, the Conductor of Silence. You might also recognize the title of the Architect. For now, let's focus on Corypheus. So if you do Dorian's War Table mission, you find out Corypheus' real name is Sethius Amladaris. In the Fade and Here Lies the Abyss, you find an altar covered in words written in blood. The words are from a slave of Corypheus. Master unveiled a new altar. It stands higher than a man like a great statue, and great spikes stood out from its length, hungry for blood. Master calls it the Claws of Dumat and says the altar will help bring Tevinter to glory. I praised it as was expected, and Master smiled. It was good to see him smile again. He has been fearful of late, vexed by the loss of followers. He has met with the other priests and in secret, and I've heard them discussing ways to return the people of Tevinter to the ways of the old gods, as is only just. He spoke to me later in the day and asked that I would call him Corypheus, as it was the name he would take for himself after a ritual. He could be stern, but he was not a cruel man. The weakening of the temples brought fear into his heart, and that fear has changed him. The cuts upon his arms were deeper and longer where he uses blood magic more often. He speaks to his wife little. He only listens to the voices in his dreams. We learn a lot about Sethius here. He was human once, married, not normally a cruel man, but fear made him anxious, made him who he has become, made him into the monster that is Corypheus. Breaching the Fade. From what we have learned about the actual event, the account from the Chantry actually came pretty close to reality. The one major difference is what happened in the Fade and its aftermath, and that's a pretty big difference. When you first meet Corypheus in Dragon Age 2, he mentions that the city was already black. In Dragon Age Inquisition, he mentions that the Golden City was empty, and in the Temple of Dumat, he states that the world misremembered the events, that they did not bring the Blight into this world, but they discovered it, and that they let it consume them for more power. So then, while the Magisters perhaps were the catalyst to the Blights, they are not the source of them, and we don't know who or what was. Why did they believe the corruption would give them power? Although it did, how did they know that? Did the old gods tell them that? And if so, why? The Blights have only brought death to the old gods, or perhaps is that the plan? There are so many questions surrounding this, and it seems the deeper we go into the series, we are getting more questions than answers. Where are they now? So where are the other Magisters now? We know from our experiences with Corypheus that they can't be easily killed, so it's likely that all 7 are floating around somewhere. Your Inquisitor made it certain that our dear conductor got his dream vacation in the Fade, and the World of Thedas Volume 2 has made it known that he is dead, or what passes for dead when a physical being is consumed by the Fade. As for the Architects, his current whereabouts are unknown. Although the Warden had the choice to kill him, it would be pretty unlikely that he's actually dead. Did he live again through Serani? Perhaps one of your companions? Maybe even through the Warden or Warden Commander? Either way, he is probably alive and doesn't seem to remember who he is or what he has done. The others are pretty much a mystery. Corypheus' memory crystal in the Temple of Dumat mentions that the others are lost, and he's not even sure if they made it out of the Black City. But we do get one hint. In Valimar, we get a codex entry from an unknown journal of a dwarf. We finally found a muck alive in that passage. Still can't believe it. The only reason I didn't stop digging is because he had the key to the cache, but after 2 weeks I was still expecting to find out his corpse. What story does he come up with? That he was found by a darkspawn of all things. A talking darkspawn, polite as you please, who fed him and gave him water and evidently chatted with him about surfacers. I don't know what a muck is thinking, coming up with a story like that, but he swore by the stone it was all the truth. Crazy as it sounds, I know a muck, and he's got the imagination of a dull hammer. Why would he make up something like that? Reminds me of a story my grandsire used to tell about something his grandsire did. Said he once came upon a group of 3 darkspawn in the deeper roads, each twice the size of any dwarf, bigger than humans even, and dressed up like kings. He watched from the shadows and said they talked like people about things he couldn't understand. City gone black, and they blamed each other for things that he could barely remember. Story goes they attacked each other, and one ran off while the second choked the third to death and then ate him. Okay, so at one point, 3 Magisters are in the Deep Roads. We know that none of them are Corypheus, as he would be locked up by the Wardens at this point, and then also he would then know what happened to the others. One might be the Architect, or it might not. Either way, that leaves at least 2 other Magisters that are walking around somewhere in Thedas, and one is apparently a cannibal. Not that the taint probably did their sanity any good, but I'm putting my money on that one being the Madman of Chaos. Still, from this count, and if we say that none of the arguing 3 are the Architect, this only accounts for 5 of the 7 Magisters. Did the other 2 make it out, and have they just not been seen, or are the other 2 still stuck in the Black City? And if they are stuck, what have they been up to? And that, honored patrons, is what we know of the High Priests of the Old Gods and their connection to the Blight. Do you still have lingering questions, proof that I'm wrong, comments about your own fan theory? Feel free to tweet me at @Gelderthon on Twitter, or send a PM to user Gilnan on Reddit. They're asked for all.